Hi, my name is Rod Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build a Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled that you're here. And I know you're going to get value from the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name's Andrew Schutsky, and he's the founder of Redline Equity. And he also hosts a podcast, Crushing Cash Flow Podcast. I think I'll leave it at that. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Rod. I'm a huge fan of yourself, of your show, obviously, of your books, a lot of your work. So I'm honored to be here. I'm extremely grateful and blessed. Thanks for so much for having me.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, buddy. Thank you. And so let's start by having you tell a little bit of your story. You know, just I know you're a CIO, Chief Information Officer now, and have been probably for quite a while.
Yep.
Why real estate, and when real estate, and how did you progress? If you tell us all that.
Yeah, so I'll take it back about a decade or so. Back in 2007, I started with, I guess it was a house hack before anybody called it that, really. It was a single family. I was traveling all the time as a consulting. It was really never home. So I'm like, let me utilize some extra space in my property. From there, started looking at smaller scale rentals, single family stuff. Got a little bit scared off. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have been in the 08, 09 crash. So I kind of put that on hold for a while. Then came back later in the, 2014, 2015 timeframe, got into short-term rentals. I figured, hey, I'm going to spend time at the beach. I'm going to start looking for properties down there. It was a kind of a cool place to take the family and profit a little bit and then get some cash flow on the side. And my original plan was to keep scaling that. And what I learned quickly is it takes a lot of cash out of pocket. And even with, my wife and I are really fortunate, great W2 jobs, got a lot of income, we're fortunate and blessed that way, but you can only do so much. And to get where we wanted to be, to do the early retirement thing, to be financially free, it was decades, not years, right? So fast forward to 2019, started reading up a lot of books on the multifamily space. A friend had introduced me to a topic, and a local mentor who happened to be a syndicator, and opened my eyes to a whole new world. So then I went kind of crazy and started, attending every boot camp I could, a lot of conferences, reading dozens and dozens of books, including yours, of course, Rod, big fan. And, kind of networked my way into my first deal saying, hey, I've got a good investor base through my W2 and friends and family. And I'm starting to kind of spread the word of, hey, there's this whole kind of little niche market that now that I'm in the world of it seems so obvious, but of course it didn't at the time. Started spreading the word and just started bringing capital to my first deal. And that's how I kind of got into multifamily. And from there, it's been a lot of momentum in the last 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, you've done a lot in the last 12 months. I mean, I think you did your first deal, you said in April of this year, which is fantastic. That's correct. I mean, and you're at 1,100 doors, a GP and an LP. And so let's talk about that first deal. How big was it? Was it a syndication? Was it a joint venture? Can you speak to it a little bit?
Absolutely. It was a syndication.
Okay.
And the way I found my way into it is one of the most common questions I get asked from a lot of the new guys that want to know, hey, how do I follow your footsteps? A lot of questions on websites, bigger pockets, that kind of thing is I networked my face off to the point where it was exhausting, but I was energizing. My wife would be like, you're crazy. You're on these phone calls like every night during the week after work. On the weekends, you're in all these conferences. Are you really getting traction? And, a few months later, I found my way into a deal just kind of, hey, I can play any role you want. I can sweep the floors. I can do whatever you want. Here's what I'm looking for. It was a 94 unit in Georgia, relatively smooth closing, and, was able to add value from there. It's opened a lot of doors. So as you know,
so you were able to add value by bringing equity for the most part. And then obviously you can't just bring equity. By the way, guys, don't think you can just bring money to a deal. You can't. You have to be active in the deal. But that's how you got your foot in the door with with someone that already had the deal under contract, and that's how you got started. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did you have the network built? As you said, you're networking. Okay. So you're just networking like crazy. And that's how when the deal popped up, you already had some reach and you were able to capitalize on that reach. And now, of course, you've got your podcast, which is another component of that. Okay. So, well, let's go through some questions that we've got here that I think will add value to listeners. So you've got a pretty significant W-2 job. You're the CIO, you're C-level,
Yep.
in a company, a big company, and that's not like something you can do, a couple hours a day. You've got a family. I assume you have kids.
Yep. I do. 2 kids, 6 and 8. So
wow,
that's a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean 6 and 8. That's so. How do you keep them a priority?
Yeah.
While you've got your W-2, while you're building this side hustle, can you speak to that?
I'd love to. And this is another thing I love to talk about. It's a passion of mine. And number one, I'll say there's no magic bullet. It's no easy, I'm always refining my process, but I have a few key principles I'd like to share with everybody. One, it wouldn't be possible without my very understanding wife. We both had demanding W-2 jobs, but we each share a bulk of the responsibility. We each share, each other's successes in our careers, and we have to give and take from time to time, right? So flexibility and understanding and being aligned with your spouse or your significant other is absolutely critical. The second piece for me is just absolute ruthless discipline with your time, right? So it's just being absolutely deliberate about what you do, how you invest your time, what meetings you attend to, who you meet with, being sure to help others and have them help you back. They're all part of that. And I guess number 3 is
no, hold on. Don't go by that. So how do you actually do that? So how, I teach this weekly planning process at my boot camps, which ties to this. And I'm just curious if it's similar to what you do. So how are you ruthless with your time?
Yeah. So I guess I was bleeding into number 3, which is kind of a parallel to, I'll call it 2B, which is time blocking. I mean, it's simple. Back from my program and project management days, I'm an early riser and everybody's schedule is a little bit different. Most people would cringe at 5, 6 a.m., pounding the books or just kind of, following up with brokers, your contacts, whatever's happening. For me, the rest of my family likes to sleep in. So I take advantage of that. So for me, that 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. window is absolutely paramount. And what I found is you don't want to try, especially with a high profile W-2 or a demanding family, you don't want to try to blur the lines of, hey, try to do everything all the time. So to me, it's easier to say, hey, kind of pile up everything you got to do or your key responsibilities into those windows. So to me, it's lunchtime. It's sometimes 12 to 1 p.m. It's the early morning hours. And then it's after everybody goes to bed, 8 to 9. I found that it's very stressful to try to blur the lines between jobs, and it's not fair or ethical to do so either. So, and don't get me wrong, there's always exceptions where maybe I've got downtime at the airport and I can make use of that time. Or I have an important lunch meeting with the W-2 or something really early meeting with the Asia folks from my W-2. There's always give and takes, but I try to kind of force fit everything to that 90% principle into those time blocks. So not easily done, but you got to have rules and guidelines and that North Star to keep you honest.
No, that's good. Time blocking is a critical component of what I teach as well. And there's some other pieces. And guys, if you are interested in my planning process, I actually did it on January 2nd on my Khleif official Facebook page. If you ping me on any social channel and just say, can you send me the goal setting workshop? At the tail end of that, I did that weekly planning process. It's about 15 minutes, but it's very, very powerful. It's how I managed a couple large companies at the same time. And it included time blocking. And by the way, and this means sometimes time blocking for your family as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not just the work stuff. And I know that sounds over the top, but it's not. One of my greatest regrets in life was coming home to my family and playing with my kids, but being distracted, not there mentally. It's my greatest regret to this day. And so this prevents that from happening. All right, fantastic. So, but by the way, one other question, because mornings are so important. I interviewed Hal Elrod on my show, The Miracle Morning, and, about getting up, journaling, scribing, he calls it, meditation or prayer, exercise, of course. Do you do any of that, or you just go straight to work? How do you manage those other things?
Yeah, no, great question. A little bit of everything, but pretty methodical now where I'll wake up. I got to have a couple of minutes to get myself together, but I'm pretty relentless with, get some food in your body, get a little coffee. I always spend, 20, 30 minutes between a little bit of meditation, prayer, and then a little bit of education, right? So I got to get my mind right. I love reading, educational mindset books, obviously multifamily books. So it's a kind of a primer for me. It's almost, I've got it down to a recipe where if I deviate from that, like we're on vacation or something, I feel like I'm off. So I have to have, it's almost like, you get physical food for physical nourishment. You get that mental, spiritual stimulation. It all kind of comes together. And after a lot of trial and error, I realized like that's the key ingredient that keeps me motivated through the down times or the tough times. And it just keeps me coming back. And that's, everybody's going to be a little different. That's through trial and error what's worked for me.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. All right. And by the way, just mention one other thing, guys. It's so important to acknowledge your progress every week and celebrate it consciously. Okay. Because, I tell the story, you probably heard me tell the story about building that house on the beach. Within 2 months of it, I was depressed because I wasn't progressing anymore. Happiness comes from progress and growth. And that's one of the pieces that's so critical that you do, is you acknowledge that progress and growth consciously. It just takes a split second. Good job, Rod. You got that done. Doesn't matter how small it is. Yeah. And then, because you're going to have delays, you're going to have setbacks, and you're going to have things don't take as long. But if you're progressing and growing, you're happy. And so as it relates to delays, you kicked ass and got going very, very quickly. Talk about how you got 2 deals closed within the first 5 months. I mean, I think I know the answer. You aligned with others, but I don't want to steal I just stole your thunder. Hopefully I didn't steal all your thunder there, but talk about how you did it. Okay.
Yeah. So to be honest, it's a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck mixed in, right? So there's no guarantee that through, massive amounts of networking and connecting with brokers and taking field trips to your target markets, which I think are all very critical. Right. There's no guarantee or formula for success in that, but your odds go up dramatically. Right. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's absolutely constant, relentless education. Right. So the last Christmas break going into 2020, I got obsessed. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. I went through a dozen books in a week, and then, started looking for every meetup I could sign up on, started being active on forums, joining groups, looking at mastermind coaches, that kind of thing as you go along. All of those were kind of pieces of the puzzle. But again, no guarantee. It's a little bit of luck. But I truly believe that if you put your intentions out there, you lock in on your goals, you're going to have success. It's a matter of time and when, but you got to be persistent.
So you've written your goals? Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, I know you were on video here, but I've always got them visible here on my whiteboard. Pretty crappy.
They're right there on your whiteboard. Good.
They're all the time. And I'm tweaking them. And it's funny you mentioned the family thing, because I realized a very glaring omission in that is I'd always be focused on the next thing. Hey, this many properties, this much, and maybe a net worth projection in a certain number of years. But I'm like, you know what? Why not include health, family? I mean, in there. Other than that, those things are worthless. So now I've got that as one of my legs on my stool for my goals, is like, hey, an hour or two of quality time with family every day. Yeah. I mean, it's a must. It's a must. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I sometimes I miss that, but my whiteboard draws me back to how important that really is. And I 100% mean that,
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we do at my boot camp is we do this wheel of your life, and we measure every one of these areas, and it's always painful. Nobody's breathing because they realize they're screwing up in a couple of areas, but it's to draw attention to it so that you don't. And, it's very, very important for you to acknowledge what's most important in your life and give it energy on a consistent basis. So I'm glad that that's the case for you. Love it. So listen, we know this business is a team sport. So talk about, how you aligned with people to go out there and do this business, and we'll drill down on that a little bit because it's such an important topic.
Yeah. No, great question again. I mean, I look back at the last year, especially the first, before closing the first deal, it's a lot of matchmaking, right? A lot of like speed dating in terms of like, I think I know what I want to do. I think I know what I'm good at. And it's a process of trying to find others who are filling those gaps, right? For instance, I know, I can do underwriting. I can do asset management. I can, raise money, all those different roles. What do I really love to do? And my advice to everybody would be pick one and go. You don't have to develop every weakness, right? That's why teams are so powerful, so important. And honestly, it feels great to be part of a bigger team, to help other people succeed. It's not a one-man show. It's funny when I think back to, one of my first early introductions into real estate, my grandfather owned, I think it was a sixplex. And this is back before I was even a teenager. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing my dad mowing the lawn and them all doing everything themselves. And I'm thinking, wow, that sucks. Like, who would want to own this? Realizing later on that, it's part of having a property manager and having a professional property management team in place. You don't have to do all that stuff. You don't have to do all the stuff that you don't love to do. Focus on the one thing, whether it's, for me, I really love finding that needle in a haystack, connecting with brokers, negotiating. Like, that's my thing. And I'm learning more and more that forget about the other stuff, find people, do that speed dating. and find people who love to do what they do and find the match. It may take some time, may take 20, 30, 40, 50 repetitions, but eventually you will if you're persistent.
Listen, guys, there are so many ways that you can add value to a team in this business. And like Andrew said, don't focus on your weaknesses. Focus on and build your strengths. Why? Because if you're strong in something, that means you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, that means you're passionate about it. And you have to be passionate to influence people to want to work with you. And, one of the most common, and you guys heard me say this ad nauseum, but I'm just going to say it again anyway. One of the most common partnerships I see is someone that's analytical with someone that's more outgoing. And I've seen that dozens of times. And that's mine in my situation as well. And so, besides that, let's say you're not analytical, but you've done maybe business, you've managed a team, or you've done some project management, or you've done things of that nature where you could do asset management. Maybe you've got some construction background. You could be involved in due diligence. Maybe you're a bird. You're hunting for deals like Andrew, or building investor relationships by networking like Andrew's done here as well. So there's so many places you can add value to a team, and there's a reason that my warriors, my coaching students are now, I know they've exceeded 50,000 doors, and I've been teaching 4 years. So I'm super freaking proud of that. And most of those were done between warriors, building their strengths. And we do what we can to facilitate those relationships, because that is the key to this business. So you identified it very quickly, which is how you were able to close on a couple of deals very, very quickly. So talk about investor relations. I know that you've got your podcast, and I think this question I'm going to ask you could tie into that as well. But how are you taken seriously from investors when you're fairly new, or brand new, as it were, before you started? And how'd you build some credibility with them?
Yeah, for me, I started with a point of commonality, right? So my niche is a lot of technology professionals. Sometimes they're in manufacturing, but I kind of used my basis and credibility. A lot of people knew me from industry, from different companies. So I started with my professional network from the W2, which has been very powerful, very extensive. A lot of them they'd known me from dabbling in different ventures and the short-term rental stuff. And I'm like, hey guys, here's what I'm getting into. So I started spreading the word. I used the holidays as a kind of a reason to get together with people and kind of mention, hey, here's where I'm going after. I'd love for you to be a part of it, or at least consider it, like to be educated by it, right? Let me tell you about why I'm so passionate about this area. And then as you get deals, hey, let me add you to my subscriber list, and start to build that base. And they started telling other people who would tell other people. So I always started with that sphere of commonality, like, hey, I'm a common technology professional. Yeah. We all have, bonus and stock option money that we may or may not know what to do with it. And everybody wants to put it in the stock market. Here's a great option. And here's why I think it's a great option. And it kind of spiraled from there. And it's still nowhere near where I want it to be, 10 years from now, but it was a great start. So my advice to listeners would be, start with your point of commonality, connect with someone who has a common interest, common professional relationship, something that you're relatable, right, to them, saying, hey, I'm in this along with you. I'm partnering alongside of you. It's not just I'm pitching something I believe in, I invest in. I invite you to join me along for the ride, No,
that's I see, I host a mastermind of the largest multifamily operators really in the world now. And we're meeting in January here. That's why it's top of mind for me. But I've seen doctors in that group that have thousands of doors that reach out to doctors. You're in the IT space. You reach out to IT professionals. I mean, and when you say commonality, by the way, guys, anytime you're building a relationship, you start a relationship, you have to build rapport. And the easiest way to build rapport is to find commonality. Women are great at this. Oh my God, I love your shoes.
Exactly.
Men not as much. How about those Broncos? That's about it there for men. But I'm joking. But the point is that's how you build rapport, by finding commonality. And then once you've got that rapport, I'll tell you something else that's kind of cool. If two people are in rapport and you watch them, it's very fascinating sometimes. Like if you're at a restaurant or something and they're totally in rapport, meaning they're totally connected, they'll make the same movements. One will put their hand up on their chin. The other one will put their hand up on their chin. They'll cross their legs. It's fascinating to watch. But I'll tell you something else. If you are in rapport with someone, whoever in that conversation has the most certainty about the subject matter will always influence the other person. And so, that's why education is so freaking critical. In fact, let's talk about that for a minute. It seems like you take that pretty seriously. Can you expand on that topic for me?
No, I'd love to. For me, I'll start. It's a source of energy, right? I'm an individual, I guess, maybe a natural introvert by nature, although most people don't believe that. But
yeah, that's hard to believe because you're a great communicator. You don't sound like an introvert at all. But anyway, yeah.
Maybe it's just kind of over the years breaking out of your comfort zone. But for me, I draw energy, and I guess I draw confidence from education, right? I need to know, like, if I'm going to, be a custodian of someone else's money or venture a new territory, I almost beat myself into submission where I overeducate myself. But that's just my process for instilling confidence and being confident what I'm doing and confident when I'm making offers that we're going to be able to close and that kind of thing. For me, education is the first of many steps, aside from, needing to take action and all that. But education without action is reckless. But only education without action is like being a professor, right? It gets you really nowhere. So to me, it's the first of many steps, but there's a reason it's first and not in the middle or last. It starts with education. You can build from there.
Well, I'll add to that. And that is dabblers get crushed. Dabblers get their butts kicked. You can't dabble in this or any business, frankly. If you give it the energy it deserves, that's the first step. You've got to build the competence first. And, to do this business, you also have to have confidence, but it starts with competence. You have to be competent enough to have that confidence, unless you're just full of crap. There are people out there that BS their way through, but that's not the way to do it. Build the competence first, then competence, then confidence. And then you have that ability to influence people. And if you're operating in what you're strong in, you're going to be passionate, like I said, and it'll be even easier to influence people. Love it. So talk about creating reach. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've got, we'll do podcasts for sure. I've got students that have award-winning podcasts, meetup groups, so on and so forth. Talk about how you created reach and the benefits of it.
Yeah. So a couple of mechanisms I think have been most popular. Again, more of a trial and error thing for me. When I started the podcast, it was kind of like, hey, anything I can do to get my name out there and share my experiences with other people and just share another spin. And there's lots of podcasts out there, don't get me wrong, but if I can do anything to share what I know with other people, help them, educate them, maybe get them interested in investing, I'm going to do it. Right. So the podcast has been probably the largest platform for me personally, aside from, getting leads through the website, posting on different social media groups, attending local meetup groups, and just spreading the word and just offering my expertise. Especially, I really love helping people doing their first deal because, again, I've walked in their shoes not too long ago. A lot of lessons learned along the way, a lot of things I would do differently, speed things up, et cetera. So, they're the main sources, but I think the podcast has been top of list for me.
Sure. Let me expand on what Andrew just said. So, you guys, we live in the greatest time on freaking earth to create reach. But when I started, there was no social media. If you wanted to meet somebody, you either called them on the phone or you went and shook their hand. That was it. Now, my podcast, almost 12 million downloads, my YouTube channel watched for 40,000 hours last year. That was just podcast interviews we threw up there, and the reach on Facebook, on Twitter. They've got me on TikTok now. I've had, TikTok videos that are a minute long. They've been watched 300,000 times and I've only been on there for 90 days. And so the guys, and you don't need that kind of reach, but you've got to get out there. And, there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, there's all of these TikTok. And believe it or not, I was thinking TikTok. I couldn't even spell TikTok 90 days ago, but I was thinking it's a waste of time. But my ass gets sucked into TikTok now. I'm sitting there, I'm watching these stupid, inane videos for an hour. I'm like, what am I doing? But the point is creating reach, and you don't need thousands, tens of thousands of people following you. I will tell you, if you listen to my podcast, the people that have thousands of units that started pre-social media, they did it with a real estate investor club. Yeah. They had maybe 30, 40 people show up and they raised millions of dollars from that network. Okay. If you start something, whatever it is, and you add value, maybe it's a YouTube channel, maybe it's a blog, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's, adding value on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever, start a Facebook group. I've got students that have 20,000 people in a Facebook groups, several of them. And so the point is, there's two things to remember. One is you have to add value. If you make it about you and you make it about selling, that's not adding value. You add value. That's number one. Number two is you have to be consistent, period. If you do those two things, and here's the other thing, you can fake it till you make it. Like, with a podcast, you interview the experts. You just be good at asking questions. And what's great about that, or even hosting a meetup or anything like that, you're perceived as the expert because you're the one hosting it and interviewing those people. You agree with me, Andrew?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, don't wait for perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress, right? You don't have to be an expert in every single area. Just get over the hump, get going. And I love the consistency aspect because that's really what it takes. Just get out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't wait until it's perfect. Just get going.
Oh, if you see some of my first videos, good God, I cringe when I see them. I've got my button down shirt. I'm nervous. I'm trying to record a freaking video. It's painful to watch, but when you're consistent, you become better at it. And again, if you're the one that writes the book, that hosts the podcast, that hosts the meetup group, that, starts a Facebook group and just adds value or interviews people, you're perceived in that position of authority, and you're faking it till you make it. And that's okay. That's how everybody freaking starts. They fake it till they make it. So nobody's a professional right out of the gate. Okay. Well, last topic. You mentioned people investing with their IRA in the stock market, and I cringe because, that's the first thing that crashes anytime there's a contraction. And I believe we're heading for one at some point here. Good God. I mean, we're going to have inflation for sure, but I think we're also going to have a pullback. It's just the way real estate works, not something to fear, something to be ready for. I'm getting in a lot of cash right now. I'm telling my students, get in a lot of cash because there'll be exponential opportunities if and when it happens. Who knows when, but it's inevitable. I've been through 3 of these downturns and it's coming at some point. But and stock market's the first thing to go. So when you see the stock market start to crash, guys, that's the clue. Okay. And that what's going to hit the fan here at some point. And, I'm pre-framing my investors, to tell them when that happens, don't be afraid. The new media, we started on the fake news. The media will be telling you real estate's going to suck for 10 years, but you got to recognize that that's what they do. And that's when you buy, and that's when there'll be exponential deals. But talk about your vision of the stock market versus multifamily investing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think every investment tool has its place, right? And I'm a big fan of diversifying, to keep everything consistent. And you're right. There's a lot of volatility in the stock market. And one of the biggest reasons I'll always invest in real estate. At the same time, I'll never be 100% real estate. I mean, a large portion of net worth will be sitting there, but I always like to dabble, or I guess to expand and diversify in the stock market. But my concentration focus, what happens to be in real estate for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I think my biggest lesson learned, if I went back to, again, my start in 2007 was, hey, when that market crashed, I shouldn't be scared and following all the news headlines. That's the time and opportunity that I missed. And I won't make that mistake again. I can tell you that.
Same here, man. Same here. I was hiding under a rock because I'd lost $50 million. But if I hadn't been, I'd be on the back of my yacht right now having this conversation with you. And so, that was a missed opportunity for sure. With crisis comes opportunity. You just have to realize that. But let me say this, okay, about your comment about being diversified. I'm going to push back on that. And here's why, because you can't be an expert in all these different modalities. And if you're going to invest in something, for God's sakes, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to hand your money over to someone unless you really have faith in their abilities and you've thoroughly vetted them. That's very dangerous, frankly. And that means stock market, brokers, stockbrokers and things like that as well. Same with operators in the, GP operators in the multifamily space. I give a book about, the questions you should ask a general partner before you get into a syndication. If you guys want it, just text GP questions to 72345 and get this. So they ask all the right questions because, again, diversifications, I'm against it personally. I'm about focus, and I believe focus is power. A lot of financial planners talk about diversification and so on and so forth. Of course, if I'd have been diversified in 2008, maybe I wouldn't have had my ass handed to me. Who knows? But
Yep.
I do believe in being, super knowledgeable in what you're investing in. So I don't know if you've got a feedback on what I just said, but
no, that's all very fair. And it's funny. I just had a gentleman on my podcast a few weeks back, and he gave his golden rule for investing. He was a investor relations manager, but also oversaw portfolios, multiple millions. Mm-hmm. And he's like, look, I have two rules. One, if you want to build wealth, concentrate your efforts, right? So it could be 2 stocks, it could be only real estate, whatever. If you want to protect wealth, diversify, right? So you're not going to have the same, principles. That made a lot of sense to me. But for me, when I say diversify, I don't mean go, invest in 20 mutual funds and give all your money to a broker. For me, it's, again, just like real estate. At one point, I was obsessed with the stock market, and it's always going to be maybe 2 or 3 industries I invest in that I heavily believe in. I'm involved in. Maybe I'm on the outskirts of. It's never going to be, hey, put all my money in a mutual fund and go give somebody else the keys, right? So, but I like that golden rule. I think,
No, I like that too. Yeah. Anytime I've gotten out of my wheelhouse, I've gotten spanked. Yeah. Okay. And that includes the stock market. So maybe I've got a little baggage back there. I went and got the charting softwares and I started studying it and I freaking hated it. That's probably the reason I got spanked. But I tell you, focus on what you love. Number one, if you like those industries you're invested in, then you're interested and you're reading and you're tracking and you're staying on top of things. So that's actually absolutely, I agree with that. But the core message there is focus on what you like. And if you don't love this business, multifamily investing, you can certainly associate pleasure with it and learn to love it. But if you can't learn to love it, for God's sakes, go do something else. Do you agree with me?
I do. I actually have a quote that my colleagues and I came up with. It's like, find the fun in the chaos, right? And if you don't,
I'm sorry, one more time. I'm sorry, I missed that. One more time.
Try to find the fun in the chaos.
Oh, right? I love it. Okay.
Every day is hectic, right? And then we all get through the grind, especially if you're blending multiple jobs, whatever it may be. But like, don't try to avoid the chaos, but find the fun and pleasure in it. Find the humor and the downside of situations, right? It keeps you going because everybody has their why, but ultimately things get tough. You got to smile about it, right? Otherwise you won't survive. Yeah.
Well, that's a great strategy. Well, listen, brother, I've enjoyed meeting you and having you on the show. And you've absolutely added value, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.
Absolutely. Like I said, if there's any one nugget somebody can take away, that's my job is well done today. So thanks. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Thanks, Rod.
You bet.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345 and we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345.